Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining. We will give a couple minutes to see if we have more attendees joining, and in a little bit, we will kick off, okay? In the meantime, feel free to use the chat, introduce yourself, start making connections. After all, this is all about it. We want a network. We want you to learn about this panel, but also meet each other. So please start using the chat, and in a little bit, we'll start the conversation. Okay, I would say we have a really good quorum now. Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourselves, and welcome. My name is Paulina Garcia. I am the Chief Partnership Officer of Real Human, a foundation dedicating to advance equity for all, with a particular focus on Hispanics in the United States. Today is the third of a six-part capacity building series. During the second session, we covered how to create a more diverse and inclusive hiring strategy. Today, we will be talking about achieving equity in leadership, advancing Hispanic professionals to the top by sharing best practices in real-life examples. For those who may not be familiar, the Hispanic Promise is the first of its kind national corporate pledge to prepare, hire, promote, retain, and celebrate Hispanics in the workplace and buy and invest from Hispanic vendors. Launched at the World Economic Forum in 2019, and the result of joint efforts of multiple Hispanic organizations, the Hispanic Promise is a non-legally binding sign of intention, a call to action for business leaders and companies of corporate America to create a more inclusive work environment for Hispanics. To date, more than 300 companies have signed into it, and we highly encourage you to sign it too if you haven't yet. During this conversation, we will address the issue of underrepresentation of Hispanics in leadership roles and explore strategies for developing and promoting Hispanic talent within organizations. From higher education to C-suite, we will explore how to develop and support Hispanic leaders, build strong networks, and leverage mentorship and sponsorship to propel career growth. As attendees, you can expect to learn practical and applicable information from industry experts on how to develop effective strategies for talent development, diversity, and inclusion. Whether you are an educator, a corporate leader, or simply interested in the future of work and education, this panel is an excellent opportunity to learn and share ideas with like-minded professionals. Now, I am more than happy to present our stellar panel for today. First, Jessica Palacios. She is the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion for talent acquisition at BlackRock, where she oversees a center of excellence focused on driving DEI initiatives. Alongside her role, she also leads America's campus recruiting. Committed to giving back to her community, Jessica also volunteers with the Association of Latino Professionals for America and the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. Next, Judith Almendra. She has over 17 years of experience in international business and human capital. Her global perspective and multicultural market insights have been instrumental in driving transformative culture changes on an international scale. She prioritizes fostering a people-centric culture that empowers colleagues to flourish, and she contributes to the T-Tech Community Foundation as a board member, focusing on improving educational opportunities for children in underserved communities. Following up, Janine Ting Jansen. She is an experienced diversity leader with over 20 years in HR, specializing in finance, law, and pharmaceuticals. She currently serves as the Global Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Lead at Organon Pharmaceuticals. She is an advocate for underrepresented communities and actively contributes to various organizations through public speaking, mentoring, and addressing bias. Last but not least, we have Jacqueline Ruiz. She has created 2 successful award-winning companies, established 2 non-for-profit organizations, and published 32 books, which comprises the largest collection of Latina stories in a book anthology series worldwide. She is one of the few Latino sports airplane pilots in the United States, and recently collaborated with College Park Aviation Museum to create the world's first exhibit honoring Latinas in aviation. Okay, now, enough of me talking. Let's open it up to the discussion with our wonderful panel. Latinos have made progress in increasing their representation in professional settings, with their share hitting 25% in the past decade. However, they continue to experience barriers such as discrimination, biases, and limited opportunities for advancements in their careers. Judith, tell us what are some examples of best practices, programs, and initiatives that your company has implemented to advance and overcome this Hispanic promise pillar and barrier.
Thank you, Paulina, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hopefully we'll have a great discussion. So this is definitely a problem and an opportunity that we have across the U.S. I think for us at T-Tech, with global representation, we support our customers in 22 different countries. It was fundamental for us to make sure that we create a very inclusive environment. We just won the Forbes 2022 Best Companies Award for Diversity, and it doesn't happen by accident. You have to have a very conscious approach when it comes to supporting those underrepresented groups. For us, it starts at the top in terms of the leadership, in terms of the culture that we wanted to establish as an organization as part of our values. So if you ever go and check our website, there's a culture book that speaks, and it has a full section about how we actually create that inclusive environment, from creating employee resource groups, education for our people managers, our hiring managers, and for everyone at the leadership level, providing practical experiences and making sure that we have mentorship programs as an immigrant to this country and a Hispanic. I'm originally from Mexico. I'm super passionate to make sure that we are providing those opportunities to our Hispanic community. And we're overrepresented in our Hispanic population across our organization, and not only at the entry level, but across managerial roles. One of the things that we found is that it was important for people to understand and have mentors and make sure that they are comfortable raising their hand. What we saw at the beginning as we were starting some of our efforts, it was like a lot of our Hispanics were not participating in the programs that we have available to them. And it was either they were second guessing themselves. So I think it's just providing those forums and providing those opportunities, something that we launched using a little bit of artificial intelligence. People don't always feel comfortable having certain conversations. So we launched something that is called a diversity bot. And the bot allows you to have those conversations that sometimes you don't feel comfortable having, whether it's, thinking about the promotion, thinking about the salary increase, how to really address your unconscious bias and having uncomfortable conversations in a comfortable environment. So that has been really instrumental for us. But I would say continuous education across the organization and demonstrating that commitment. And there's nothing like telling the stories of the people that has grown through the business to demonstrate that our commitment is real.
Thank you so much, Judith. I think it's wonderful. The way that you're propelling and having those spaces, those secure spaces for Hispanics to speak up, to talk about those barriers. It's very important to address that, as you were mentioning, from the leadership level, so that they feel on a comfortable environment where they can speak to their truth. Thank you so much. Jackie, would you like to add something?
Yes, from my perspective as the head of a marketing PR agency for almost 2 decades, and also the head of a publishing company and the proud publisher of the Hispanic Star series with almost 400 stories shared of our narratives, I think one of the best practices that we can implement as corporations, companies, associations is to share our stories, like Janine was saying, Judith was saying, I'm sorry, and really controlling that narrative, intercepting conversations that are meaningful, intercepting stories that can empower the next generation. I oftentimes, when I speak with our young authors, they say, well, I don't know anyone that looks like me, and they're young Latinas at 23 years old, and you're thinking, how can that even be possible, right? How can we intercept those conversations to provide role models, provide stories where they could say, you know what, if she did it in those darkest moments, I can do it too. And I live those conversations every single day as we're, curating stories, creating movements for Latinas and Latinos to share their stories across different platforms. So I would continue to encourage, actually created a board game about extemporaneous speaking and storytelling to do exactly that, create an environment where we could say, you know what, let's ask those deeper questions, those things that, perhaps as a community are holding us back. Let's open up the book on any page, because every single one of the stories that are shared, that when somebody raises their hand and say, you know what, I had something to say, it creates and it provokes inspiration. And those are the kinds of things that will continue to, propel community forward. So that's what
Thank you so much, Jackie. I do believe that we have to listen to those stories. I love what you said about opening the page in whatever page in the book, because every story is worth to be listened to and to take it into consideration so that we can shape how are we supporting the future. Janine, would you like to tell us a little bit about the product and leadership programs that you have?
Yes, thank you. And just to add on to the questions you were just before us, at Organon, we focus on a feedback culture without performance reviews to really encourage equity across all. And we've also have launched a Belonging Dialogue podcast series where our founders, our employees can share their voices at any time locally and globally and share that abroad. So we are really proud of that and bringing out those stories to really demonstrate the culture that we are all in together. And some of the programs that we pursue, we ensure with our programs that individuals can self-nominate for those programs. So we work really hard on making sure that we customize based on the need of the organization, but then and market that to the organization, allow people to self-nominate. So we participate in McKinsey leadership programs, which have programs for individual leaders, managers, and executives as a way to support founders who are located in the US while also having a global women's leadership program. One of our commitments is to have gender parity with women in leadership at all levels by 2030. And we're really proud of that commitment. And by doing so, we're looking at how we leverage recruitment techniques such as diverse slates, but also looking at how we develop. And at Organon, we're focused on that feedback culture, owning that development, but continuing to really just work on those behaviors where we encourage every founder to own their plan, have conversations with their manager, increase the feedback, that conversations that happen between those two individuals. Because what we see is when we can have comfortable conversations where they start, where we have this moment where we're anxious, we are increasing that psychological safety for all. So we believe in every single one of these practices, we're addressing a gap that will serve all of our founders collectively around the world. So those are the pieces of the programs that we really focus on. And as we continue to build more, increasing the equity and access for all.
That is wonderful. Thank you very much. Jessica, we would love to hear from you too.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me as well, and welcome everyone to this exciting event. We also participate in the McKinsey accelerators. We also believe in education at BlackRock. We educate our managers on unconscious bias. We use the SEEDS model to describe the type of bias that can impact the decision-making process when it comes to a performance review, when it comes to a promotion process. Excuse me. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the SEEDS model, SEEDS, semillas, right? Like seeds, SEEDS. It stands for similarity, expedience, experience, distance, and safety. And those are all types of biases that can come into those critical people decision-making processes. Additionally, our employee network, the Somos Latinx Network, has implemented several mentorship circles with Hispanic employees, with Hispanic leaders that enable the mentorship to happen at scale. We know that representation at the top doesn't always match the representation coming up through the organization. And so one challenge that Latinx and Hispanic leaders share with us is that they want to be able to do more for the community, but they don't have the bandwidth because there's just not enough of them to kind of like mentor at scale. And so what we've done is implement kind of like these mentorship circles so that groups of individuals can kind of have access to the leader at once instead of relying on the leader to have those one-on-one conversations in, potentially an unsustainable way. And lastly, we implemented something that has been very popular, not just among the Hispanic and Latinx contingency here at BlackRock, but really with all employees, and that is a career development month. And during this period, we asked all managers to host career conversations with their employees. And this way we can have an equitable approach to career conversations. We know that some employees feel that they don't get to go out to lunch, or they don't get invited to drinks, or whatever the case may be, and they don't maybe have a setting where they can describe their long-term aspirations with their management team. And so by making sure that we are tracking it and we are looking at it as a firm, and we have a dedicated space and training and sessions and a little bit of a campaign around it, it creates that dedicated time and space to discuss those longer-term objectives in an equitable way, and making sure that we are closing any experience gaps if we do see it, because now we have the data to track it.
Thank you so much, Jessica. One of our attendees said career development month is a great idea, and I think
we think so too.
I echo that sentiment, especially because promoting career development is part of promoting. It's a way of telling people that they're doing what they're doing it correctly, that they are a valuable asset to the company, and that promotion will come after we speak about the desires that we have and after we trace that career development. So kudos on that. I think it's wonderful. Moving on to the next question: what are some barriers that you or your company have faced in advancing this pillar? Jackie, we can start with you.
Beautiful. Well, as I was mentioning, I mean, from the perspective of as a publicist, as a publisher, and as a strategist, I oftentimes get tasks with, the mission to either come up with names for diversity programs, launch them, execute them. And over the last several months, I've noticed just a lot of barriers of, the perception of our community in correlation to a lot of these diversity programs. We've seen across the media, we've seen university departments, we've seen major roles, being laid off in this space. So it's almost like, are we going backwards? I mean, this is a conversation that needs to be had at all levels, and we need to propel it forward. But I feel like over the last few months, as I take the pulse of what's happening in the media, and some of those conversations that are taking place, it almost seems like we're regressing, so how do we as leaders, how do we continue to advance the conversation so that we don't have a 20-year regression on diversity and inclusion? It is something that is important, And it's something that I think we need to be aware of, this dichotomy of, on one hand, you have, companies and organizations and associations that are, creating programs, to continue to pave the way for those that might not have the resources that other communities might have, like our Latino communities. We're still underrepresented. We're still fighting for that. And then on the other hand, you have, all these things that are happening. So you're like, how do I regain that power, regain that conversation to say, no, we're not going backwards, we're moving forward. And, like I said, in my role, I get to witness that from the storytelling perspective, from the media perspective, from the strategy perspective. And I go deep into, those creative, spaces and trying to find, okay, what are the words that people need to hear? What are the things that people need to see and feelings that they need to have in a marketing piece, in a campaign, so that they can be activated and provoke that action that we're looking for. And that's an important conversation that I have with my team. Lately, it seems like almost daily, as we're helping organizations develop these programs.
Thank you so much. Janine, you want to add up on this?
Yeah, I'll just add on to this that we have a core value at Organon of we all belong, and our belonging engagement results from our founder surveys is extremely high, and we're very proud of that. I think what's hard is that we have to continue to keep momentum, keep activity up, and demonstrate the results to show that we are committed. And part of that is identifying and marketing the things that we are doing really well. We've committed to do pay equity studies, and if you take a look at our ESG report, we found the 99.9% pay equity for non-white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, US employees. And we're really proud of that. We also did several in other countries that we published. So pieces like that, having the conversation about our commitment and what that means and translating that to individuals, so what's in it for them, that's part of the continuous challenge, because part of it is a core value. We talk a lot about better business results with diversity, but it's also because it really increases the equity for all. So it's not just the right thing to do, it's a part of our core, and increasing the fluency in which our leaders can enact this. That's what brings it to life. So recently, we also committed our top 100 leaders to doing an allyship training. And the conversations that happened in the room were really insightful and inspiring of, wow, this is something I didn't know, or I've been doing this and I will continue to do more. That's how we grow together. So our commitments and keeping the activity up, I think the challenge is demonstrating to all of what's important to them, that we're doing a lot, we will continue to do a lot, but we need to hear what's important to each individual person. And that will continue to be the challenge, because the media will demonstrate pieces that are vulnerable, perhaps, but companies will continue to do the work. So any piece where they say the leadership in these spaces is going backwards, it's just making it harder, and we will continue. And that's part of, I think, the campaigning from all of us, is to demonstrate we are here, we're committed, and we will continue to make headways.
Yes, and we have to demonstrate that we are stronger than ever, and that because of this, we have to even push further the agenda of these initiatives within the companies. Jessica, would you please tell us what you think about this?
Thank you. I agree with everything that's being said. We have this conversation a lot at BlackRock in terms of the broader macro social and political dynamics that are playing out, particularly in the US. And we at BlackRock don't let a good crisis go to waste. We always think about ways to reinvent ourselves and think about the opportunities that are created sometimes when the gaps are left behind. And so if we think about the tools of tomorrow won't be the tools of today, and the tools of today are not the tools that we've used in the past. And so I think we've been here before. We've seen this movie before. We know that we can overcome these challenges, and we know that we will innovate, and that we will, continue to think about things in equitable ways for everyone, and in a way that takes the bias out of promotion decisions, hiring decisions, any decisions. We worked hard to bring the bias out of those decisions, regardless of whether the individual being impacted is Hispanic or Latinx. And I love what Janine was saying, equity for all. That is a lot of the reason why we are in the situation we are in today. People don't feel like it is equitable for all. And so we have a commitment to our community, of course, to face the historical underrepresentation that we see in the industries that we all represent. But we do have to make sure that we are doing it in an inclusive way. And that is the innovation, I think, of the future. That is the next era. One specific barrier that I see within the community is maybe a little bit of an unsavory topic, and so maybe forgive me, but I do think we get in each other's way in quite a bit. I think there is a racial conversation within the Hispanic Latinx community that is often muted. We know that a quarter of individuals in the U.S. that identify as Hispanic or Latinx identify as Black or Afro-Latinx, and we know from that subset that I think it's about 10% of them are more likely to identify with Black instead of Hispanic as an ethnicity. And so we know that there's a bifurcation within our own community based on these racial lines. And we see a challenge with our, with Hispanic leaders. I've come across it in the industry many times for individuals that are white passing. They're very happy to continue to not be perhaps advocates of the Latinx community. They don't want to be maybe out as Latinx leaders or overemphasize their Latinidad in their companies because, blending it has served them well in their careers, and perhaps it's a difficult thing to ask a leader to go outside of their comfort zone. What has been heartening for me is for the individual leaders that have confided in me this challenge, I have seen them lean more into their Latinidad as they go up the ranks. And they understand after some time that the representation is not just about achieving as far as they can go for their families, because maybe they feel like they have a burden of responsibility to serve as an example within their own families, within their own communities, to chart a path and to go as far as they can. But also that understanding and recognizing that all of us want to look up and see somebody represented, somebody advocating, and somebody bringing that diverse perspective to the table. And so it's been heartening to see, but it is something that I have seen across industries, and it is a challenge that sometimes we get into each other in our each other's way because we aren't necessarily unified as a community when we are organizing for representation in any of the industries. We see that racial bifurcation, and I think it is a unique challenge for our community that must be addressed.
Thank you so much. And for sure, it is a unique challenge that we have to address. And these platforms that we are providing today specifically help to remove those biases, power up the conversation, and be able to agree upon agenda points that we want to forward in the Hispanic community. Now, you all have said and have mentioned several of the programs that you're doing so that you can tackle into those barriers and biases that you have. I'd like to ask, how are you tracking advancement within this pillar at your company? Janine, would you please tell us?
Yeah, so part of the challenge with tracking is the metrics and the dashboards you use. So we're proud to have implemented that within our HRS system. And we have publicly reported our numbers. And I think that's a barrier many organizations face, is having the conversation of what you will release publicly, right? Because then you're accountable. So we have released our numbers for the past 2 years since we're a newer company, and we go over those numbers internally and identify those gaps. So that is part of the challenge, is once you've shared those numbers, that's the first part of the journey, and then getting to the leading indicators of how you can really advance for the communities. We work really closely with our OLA ERG and carefully craft the partnerships that they pursue, as well as the leaders within the company on how we navigate that informal sponsorship mentorship piece. And I think that's a part that really, really is amazing. And then we also look at how we can measure the participation in these programs. And part of that is removing these calibration techniques some companies use, and making sure that when we have talent discussions, we're spending so much time on diversity, but also allowing what I mentioned before, that self-nomination moment. We also have belonging for all trainings that we've opened up to everyone. We're really proud of those, and we've asked the ERGs to come in and pilot them and give us feedback to make sure they resonate. So part of this is thinking about the measurements of participation in the pieces, where they show up, what those diversity slates look like, but also continuing to release the content and have the hard discussion about what we're willing to be public with. And that's a part each company has to explore. But we're proud of that report that we have out that has the numbers in the back for people to be proud of. And we had a 7 to 8% increase in that representation between reports. So that is a lagging indicator, of course, but it is something that we ground ourselves on to know that we will continue to pursue the support for these communities.
Thank you so much. Jessica, would you like to add something?
Yes, we are big believers in data here at BlackRock. We have to balance that with what's practical in terms of our population, participating in surveys and sentiment analysis. But we are constantly looking for gaps, and we look to activate programs that close those gaps, initiatives to close those gaps. And we, would love to see even more data transparency in the industry. I think that is something that we try to be leaders on, not just from a DEI perspective, but in general. And the barrier to even disclosing the data, to understand, to give candidates and to give employees a clear picture as to what the baseline is a real challenge across industries. We don't really see many companies coming forward to say, this is our representation. This is the pay equity as it stands today. And by the way, this is our plan to address it, right? And so I think that we are all tracking, and the more we all track and the more we all disclose, the further along we can bring the industry and our community in this movement.
Definitely, because tracking progress and being transparent speaks to the employees. It gives validation. It gives trust to the company. So I think this should be a way of showcasing to your employees the commitment that you have towards them. Among Fortune 500 executives, Latina women hold the smallest percentage. They're only the 1% compared to any racial or ethnic group in the United States. Judy, what do you think what strategies can be implemented to address the significant underrepresentation of Latina women and promote greater diversity and inclusion?
I think it's a combination of everything that my fellow colleagues have talked about. It is a combination of having, for us, the Women in Leadership group that was implemented. It was a tremendous forum for females to make sure that they have someone that they could have, again, seminars that they could have topics of conversations about trusting their voice. That was very important for us to make sure that they were putting their foot forward, that they have the opportunities to have leadership representation as well that was supportive of their career progression. In the US, we're proud that we have 75% females in our organization. So so it was actually a challenge for us to make sure that that representation continue to go up. And it continued to be at the top levels in the business. I heard a quote one day that said, if your dreams don't scare you, then they are not big enough. And I think it's just putting that mindset, and a lot of our women, Latinas, and I think it's up to us. I think Jessica touched on this. It's very important for us as a generation to set the path and so to set the foundation. And if you don't do that today, just grab a young Latina and have her as your mentee and show them, kind of like talk to them about the challenges that we all have faced in our careers and the opportunities as well, to make sure that they can see it. Again, it's about a little bit about telling the stories, trusting their voice, believing in their dreams. And I think the combination of those things, and for us, is very important to make sure that we're measuring things as many of the fellow panelists talk about. If we don't measure it, then we're not holding ourselves accountable to those things. So it is very important for us to make sure that it's amazing to have great representation of employee population, but making sure that we're telling the stories. For me in particular, I was, English is my second language. I migrated to the US many years, but my accent is still there. So the company gave me the opportunity to run the Global Employee Communications Group, and just telling that story and telling people that it's like, we believe in this. And as long as you are willing to raise your hand, believe in yourself, the company will support it. It is so powerful because, again, it's someone that looks like you. It's someone that, it is that those testimonials that have made such a big difference for us.
Definitely representation matters, and having that, paying it forward, mentoring the next generation, bringing them along with us, and that scaling up, it's part of the purpose that we all have. Yeah, Jackie, would you like to add into this?
I think it's wonderful. I love how this conversation has sort of weaved into, like building upon each other. I think we're all in the same frequency as far as what needs to be done. I would just add, sponsorship, mentorship, providing tools and providing a paveway, a pathway for Latinas to see what's possible. I oftentimes, when I'm flying airplanes, I oftentimes detach myself from the ground and see this bigger perspectives, right? Zooming out, sometimes we're so focused on zoomed in activities, right? Okay, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to day in and day out. But, taking those spaces to zoom out and say, where am I actually going? And what do I need? Where are the gaps in my career? Where do I really want to go? And what do I need to help me get there, right? What practical tools, what resources, what technology, mentors, people, sponsors, and I think that Latinas can have a clearer picture, but I think, I go back to, they are the pilots in command, right? So if we are underrepresented, what can you do today to become that pilot in command of your career? Because you're the one that's going to decide where you want to end up. And because of that, the people, the situations will appear right in front of you. But I think it takes a lot of responsibility for us to determine, hey, where do I want to take my career? What is my legacy? What is my contribution to this entity, to this ecosystem, to this society? And then I think that'll give us a lot of the answers, and all the stuff that we need to help, help us get there will arrive. And that's, I feel that 100%.
Thank you so much. Janine?
Thank you. Just adding on to what we've been talking about this lack of representation at the top, we have to see past our desks, past our ERGs and our companies to the community around us. We have to inspire people to be present in politics and local government and in education. All of these pieces, when we think about the fact that you may have 2 or 3 careers in your lifetime and those pivots that can happen down the road, we have to invest in all that's around us. So it's important to have reverse mentoring, right? Seek out that sponsor, but also think beyond that to how can I continue to build up the community, and how am I uncomfortable today? Where am I taking that courage, and constantly evaluate and challenge others to do the same. So all this good work is, part of the remit that many of us has, and to increase that representation. But it takes a long time, and we need more people to do it. So also it's part of it is allyship, and seeking allies to inspire them to also contribute to the bringing up of the community. So a lot to happen here, and we see the numbers shifting, but there's more to do for all of us.
Of course, and you just mentioned allyship. It's very important to have those allies that support our cause, educate everyone, bring the data, and understand what is the gap, and why should we support, and why should we mentor, and why should we keep on pursuing supporting Hispanics in the workplace. So we have our last question. First, Latinos represent 19% of the US population. However, less than 5% of Fortune 500 boards and C-suites of corporate America are employed Latinos. What resources or support do you need that would help at the advancement of this pillar within your company organization? And for this answer, I wanted 2 folds. 1, what support do you need from the Hispanic Promise, the network, the community, or external partners? And 2, what support do you need from your company or leadership? Jackie, we can start with you.
Yes. Sorry, Hera. I think, we continue to do the same, the conversation continues, right? It's creating those initiatives, creating those pillars, creating those conversations. I oftentimes, see this as, how the needle is advancing based on the numbers of people that step forward to say, my story matters, and that I think that there's some cadence, there's some beauty in opening up that vulnerability. And I think, oftentimes in marketing, we think of push and pull marketing, and push marketing saying, oh my God, I'm grandiose, I'm amazing. But, pull marketing is saying, allowing others to recognize the value of your story. And if they recognize that, that's because you're intentionally sharing that. And I think, in Latinos, I continue to see the disadvantages, the despair, all these different things, disparities that, we're seeing in the community, but it is up to all of us to continue to elevate that narrative. And I always go back to storytelling because that's what I've been doing for the last plus decade, around the world, just really taking this unique, stories and just saying, what, people oftentimes say, what, my story doesn't work. Like, I don't have anything to say. And it takes 3 more questions. It takes that inquisitive nature of someone, us, that have, elevated in our leadership and say, what, it takes time and it takes intentionality for us to say, what, let me listen to your story. Let me ask you a few questions that help you unveil the value of your story in your community, and really begin to factualize our accomplishments, begin to factualize, what you've accomplished, what you've done, because those are the kinds of things that prevail in the, in the documenting and the encapsulating and the packaging of our community's narrative, So I think, just taking this awesome responsibility as leaders to continue to elevate others and take 3 more minutes to be interested in their narrative and allow them to uncover how beautiful their stories really are. That makes it emotional, but it's like what I get to do every day. And when people say, oh, my story doesn't matter, there's thousands of people with my story. No, your story matters because you're going to be the one, the head of the spear that is going to open up doors for the other 3 generations in your community. And that you take that as an amazing responsibility. And that's how we will continue. I think that representation and don't let those negative narratives of the media and the things that are happening around us persuade our mission of elevating our community.
Jackie, that is so beautiful. And thank you very much for what you do and for installing that hope and pride in the future generations and letting them know that their story is valuable and their story matters. Janine, would you like to add up on this?
Yeah, I'll just add that wherever you are in your company, when you have a moment with someone, always be ready with your pitch. Part of it is the storytelling Jackie's talking about, but it's also celebrating your recent achievements in the workplace, but also what you aspire to do. If you can walk in with the personal achievement and the aspirations with the senior leaders, that goes a long way. And even with allies, it really just brings people to you. So part of that is just expanding the visibility, the network of who you are uniquely. And the more you're comfortable with that, the more we can see that increase, but also challenging others to do so. We need the representation. We will continue to look in policies, how we increase seats at the table, but we also need to inspire each Latina to really advocate for themselves. So we have change makers who will continue to do the hard work of the policy change, the organizational structure, the societal structure that we continue to reevaluate and seek to make it more equitable. But then we also empower one another to bring your pitch. And that's part of this, because we can say we need more sponsorship, mentorship, but we also need to advocate. So I think when you see all of us on the screen, know that we are increasing it all the time, but we empower you to also stand tall and get what you need. So we do need the representation. It is not that you just get one and we put the pens down. It's what does the succession plan look like for the board? How diverse is it? What is the conversation around that? And how do we continue to build that pipeline from the middle, that frozen middle we talk about a lot, upwards into leadership? So those are some of the things to continue to discuss and voice, while also advocating for yourself. So it's on all of us to do so, but there's different ways we can continue the work.
Advocating for one another, advocating for ourselves, and bringing everyone on our journey. We're almost at time, but Jessica, I would like to hear from you too.
Thank you. I'd love to channel our dear Claudia, who's not here, but she always advocates, and I think it's a great thing that I'd like to just end with, really, in terms of what we need more of. And I love what Jackie was saying about factualizing things. And Claudia says, be a factivist. Make sure that you are speaking the facts of our economic power, of our economic contributions, because it's not just a moral imperative, it's a commercial imperative. And that's really something that, is going to help you in some of these conversations where you can advocate on behalf of the community. If you're in the room and somebody's like, oh, the GDP of the United Kingdom is like definitely whatever it is. And you're like, well, actually, Latinos have the 5th largest GDP in the world. It's actually ahead of the UK, by the way, also ahead of India, by the way, ahead of France, ahead of Italy. It's kind of like we have these moments to do some myth busting. We have to lean in, and we have to not only elevate the narrative, but elevate the facts, because for too long, those contributions to our economy, to our country, can be swept under the rug or ignored. And so it's important to give life to those in the day-to-day conversations that you have inside your company and also outside your company too, because knowledge is power. And I think we can all be maybe a little bit more proud of our contributions when we hear those things. And maybe we don't feel so small anymore. And maybe we do feel a little bit more emboldened and a little bit more powerful across the arc of a generation, across the arc of a career. That confidence can make a difference. And so I encourage you all, become educated on our contributions to this country, become educated on our contributions to the industry and that you participate in, so that when that door opens for the seed to be planted or for the record to be set straight, you're the one that has the knowledge. You're the subject matter expert, and they can come to you for more information in the future. It's a great way to build your own brand, but also help the community at the same time.
Amazing. And I think this was a great way also of ending this panel, because we're already at time. I only want to leave with 5 words that I got from this conversation: educate, represent, mentor, invest, and advocate. That way we will be able to keep on helping the future generations, promoting, giving that validation to the Hispanic workers, and keep pushing the agenda forward, because that's kind of our responsibility at these positions that we are right now, is bringing everyone on the journey and helping them achieve what we have achieved. Thank you all very much for your participation today. I would love to keep on talking. I would love to keep on discussing, because this is a wonderful topic, but unfortunately we've gotten to the end of our panel. I want to remind you that this is the 3rd of a 6 webinar series. So please expect a survey and some information for you to sign into the next ones and join us. Remember to sign into the Hispanic Promise. And thank you again all for your time, to our stellar panel for your insightful contributions, and for the attendees for being here, because that means you're open to learn more about how to promote your Hispanic employees and showing the commitment that you have to the Hispanic community. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.